She told Sheon that if he successfully climbed the tree and fetches its palm fruit, she would agree to marry him, and Sheon, moved by his love for her, climbed the huge palm tree. Everyone watched in awe as Sheon scaled up the tree, determined to arrive the top. After a few minutes, Sheon arrived the top of the tree and began to toss down the palm nuts when he suddenly lost his balance and fell from the top of the tree. Once upon a time, there lived a very beautiful girl named Tope, who was by far the most beautiful girl in the village. Tope was so rude and arrogant because she knew how beautiful she was. She barely associated with the other girls in the village because she believed that none of them were up to her standard. She had only one friend named Bimpe, who she had known right from when she was a child. Although Tope and Bimpe were friends, Tope always found ways to prove that she was superior to Bimpe. She would often ridicule Bimpe over her choices and say that Bimpe should be grateful that they were childhood friends, or else nothing in this life will ever bring them together as friends. Despite this, Bimpe remained a loyal friend to Tope, hoping that her attitude would change as time went on. However, this was not the case, as Tope's attitude became even worse as the years went by. One day, whilst Tope and Bimpe were taking a stroll in the village, a young man named Dotun approached them and asked to speak to Bimpe. Tope was so furious as she walked out on them angrily. She was so used to being the center of attention and could not believe that a young man would stop her friend Bimpe in her presence without paying any form of attention to her. So, filled with anger, she left Bimpe and the young man on the street as she returned back home fuming in anger. After a few minutes, Bimpe got to Tope's house and met her extremely angry. "How dare you agree to speak to that poor-looking man?" she asked Bimpe, who told her that the young man only stopped her to ask for directions. In that moment, Tope's anger died down as she began to gist Bimpe of the young man she met on her way back home that evening. Immediately Tope left Bimpe and Dotun in anger. She bumped into a very handsome man who piqued an interest in her. Tope had always been so picky about the kind of man that she wanted in her life, and this exact man checked all the boxes for her, as he was not only rich but handsome, and Tope was already falling in love with him. His name was Dara, and he just moved into their village to head the village road construction project that just kicked off. Tope described how handsome and rich Dara was to her friend Bimpe, saying that she envisioned her future with Dara. Bimpe laughed and told her to take things slow, as she did not know Dara enough to make such a decision. Bimpe then asked Tope what she would do with Sheon, who she promised to marry if he performed a very difficult task, and Tope sighed and said that Sheon was not her class, as he was too poor to be with a beautiful woman like herself. Sheon was a young man who had done everything possible to win Tope's heart. He was a poor bricklayer who was willing to do anything for Tope, but Tope never paid any attention to him. She only exploited his emotions for her and used him as an errand boy who did anything that she wanted at any time. One day, this was a few months ago, Tope made Sheon to climb the tallest palm tree in the village that no one had ever climbed before due to how high the tree was. She told Sheon that if he successfully climbed the tree and fetches its palm fruit, she would agree to marry him, and Sheon, moved by his love for her, climbed the huge palm tree. Everyone watched in awe as Shon scaled up the tree, determined to arrive the top. After a few minutes, Shon arrived the top of the tree and began to toss down the palm nuts when he suddenly lost his balance and fell from the top of the tree. As his body hit the ground, the entire village screamed in terror as they rushed to check if he was still alive. The villagers, on seeing that he was still alive, rushed him to the village healer's hut and were informed that he had slipped into a coma and had a slim chance to live. The news of Shon's condition destabilized his poor old mother, who was so reliant on Shon for her daily survival. Shon was all that she had in life, and seeing him in this condition broke her heart into a million pieces. This was not the first time that Tope was ruining a young man's life. A few years ago, Tope also made another young man named Ade to engage in a dangerous wrestling match to prove his love for her and win her heart. Ade was severely injured during the wrestling match, and although he recovered, Tope never spared him a glance because she believed that Ade did not have what it took to marry a woman like her. Her beauty made her so heartless towards men, as she capitalized on it to ruin the lives of men who picked an interest in her. She also insulted and degraded several other men who she believed were not up to her standard, because to her, being beautiful was equivalent to being superior. Tope had always dreamed of getting married to a very wealthy and handsome man, and Dara ticked all her boxes. He was not only handsome but rich, and Tope was so excited to realize that Dara was also interested in her. They began to spend more time together, and Dara asked her to be his wife. Tope could not hold back her excitement as she rushed to break the news to her friend Bimpe. On her way, she ran into Sheon's poor old mother, who was now begging on the streets for food. The old woman broke down in tears as she saw how happy Tope looked, despite what she did to her son, who was still unconscious in the healer's hut. She asked Tope what her son ever did to her to deserve such treatment from her. The old woman told Tope that her son Sheon might not have meant anything to Tope, but he meant the whole world to her. The more she poured out her heart, the more her heart shattered into a million pieces. But Tope, instead of feeling remorse for the poor old woman, ignored her and walked away. All Tope was focused on was seeing the look on Bimpe's face when she revealed to her that she was engaged. She walked briskly to Bimpe's house, and after a few minutes arrived Bimpe's hut and was told by Bimpe's little sister that Bimpe had gone to the village stream to fetch some water. Tope quickly rushed off to the village stream and met Bimpe laughing and talking to Dotun, the man who stopped Bimpe on the street a few weeks ago. Tope looked so disgusted to see Bimpe and Dotun together. She asked Bimpe what she was doing with a low life like Dotun, who was not only broke but classless and ugly. She told Bimpe that Dotun was not up to the standard of a guy that they should be talking to, and that the earlier Bimpe realizes this and puts him in his place, the better. Bimpe, listening to all Tope had said, felt so offended and hurt by Tope's words. Dotun was not only a caring and understanding man who worked so hard to earn an honest living, he was also going to be her husband because he just asked for her hand in marriage and she accepted. Tope was so shocked to hear that Dotun had also engaged Bimpe. She could not believe that Bimpe, who she considered lesser, could take such a significant decision in her life without seeking her approval. Tope was so furious as she could not bear the thought of Bimpe getting married before her, especially to someone she deemed unworthy and classless. So, she returned home and couldn't stop thinking about all that transpired by the stream. She then made up her mind to ensure that she got married before Bimpe, so as to prove a point to Bimpe that she was still superior to her. To achieve this, Tope put so much pressure on Dara, saying that if he doesn't get married to her within a week, she would move on to marry another, as there was a long queue of men who wanted to marry her. Dara, without hesitation, agreed for their wedding to hold in a week, as he could not risk losing her to another man. The day of Tope's wedding arrived, and Bimpe, despite being angry at her friend Tope, came around to support her. Tope moved from one corner of her house to the other, ensuring that everything was going on as planned, as she could not help anything ruining her big day. Tope then perceived the sweet aroma coming from the kitchen and decided to head to the kitchen to inspect the food being prepared for the wedding feast. The cooks were extremely busy around the kitchen as they cooked around the large hot stoves, stirring the massive pot of stew that they were frying. As Tope leaned over to criticize the food, one of the cooks stirred the hot stew aggressively, resulting in a huge splash which landed directly in Tope's right eye, causing her to scream in agony. Everyone gathered to see what had happened and found Tope, whose eyes were shut closed, and all efforts to make her see through her right eye seemed impossible. So, they quickly rushed her to the village healer's hut, where she was told that the hot stew had caused significant damage to her right eye, which she would be unable to use again in her life. Tope could not believe her ears. A day which was supposed to be the best day of her life turned out to be the complete opposite, as Dara went on to reveal to Tope's family that he was no longer interested in marrying their daughter Tope. Tope, on hearing this, went down on her knees and began to beg Dara not to abandon her at a time like this, and Dara looked down on her and said that he was only marrying her because of her beauty, and now that she was left with only one eye, he cannot be seen marrying a one-eyed woman, and that Tope should marry one of the other men who she told him were ready to marry her. This broke Tope's heart, as she never believed that a day like this would ever come, when a man would reject her to her face. She retreated to her room, unable to speak, as her friend Bimpe did all she could to comfort her. The news of this spread around the village, as the men who Tope had shunned in the past all laughed at her, as they could not believe that Tope would ever fall to her knees to beg a man to marry her. Tope's fall from grace was so dramatic and humiliating, and in the coming days, she regretted ever being in competition with her best friend Bimpe, who had only been a good friend to her for all these years. She watched as her whole life crumbled before her eyes, as no man in the village was willing to marry a one-eyed woman. Even the men who once admired her and pleaded for her to accept them in her life did not seem to want her anymore, and Tope began to feel the pain of those that she had wronged in her past. She now knew what it felt like to be looked down on and despised by the people who once praised her beauty and wanted to be like her. Her friend Bimpe later got married to Dotun, but despite this, she still remained a steadfast friend of Tope. She ensured that she visited Tope daily, helping her cope with her new reality, and Tope felt so terrible for how badly she treated Bimpe in the past. She apologized to Bimpe for all her wrongs and promised to change her wicked ways. This gladdened Bimpe's heart as she watched her friend transform into a kind and considerate woman. One morning, Tope left her hut and walked into the village. She apologized to all the people she had wronged in the past, and everyone was shocked as they never believed that Tope would one day apologize to them for her wrongs. She then decided to pay Shon and his mother a visit. This was the first time that she was visiting their hut since Shon fell from the palm tree. She approached their hut and met his mother, who was in a very terrible condition. Shon's mother had no one to look after her since her son fell into a coma. His condition took a toll on her health as she became terribly ill with no one to look after her. Her son Shon was still unconscious, and Tope, realizing what her actions had done to the poor woman and her son, fell to the ground and began to weep. She apologized to Shon's mother for all that she did to them and promised to make things right. Shon's mother was so shocked to see Tope in their home, as she never imagined a day like this would ever come. She forgave Tope, saying that life teaches us in unexpected ways, but that what matters is learning from our mistakes and changing for the better. Tope then decided to right her wrongs by ensuring that Shon's mother was well taken care of. She assisted her with household chores as well as meal preparation, and Shon's mother began to grow fond of Tope. Tope also ensured that she looked after Sheon, who was unconscious because of her terrible actions. She regretted how badly she treated him and wished for him to wake up. Months passed and Tope became a completely new person. Her friend Bimpe was so excited to see how happy Tope was, despite living with one eye. So, one afternoon, Bimpe invited Tope over to her home saying that she had something important to discuss with her. The seriousness in Bimpe's voice got Tope extremely worried as she wondered what she might have done wrong to her friend. When they arrived Bimpe's home, Bimpe told Tope to go into her hut and wait for her. As she walked into the hut, she was confronted with the sight of Sheon, who was standing in the middle of Bimpe's hut with his old mother. Shon was now conscious and Tope could not believe her eyes. She quickly apologized to him for what she did and Shon revealed to her that he forgave her a long time ago. He told her that although he was unconscious, he could hear everything that was happening and knew how much Tope did for his mother to atone for her wrongs. Sheon then went on to thank Tope for taking good care of his mother, who would have died if Tope did not step in at the time that she did. Sheon then declared his intentions to marry Tope, despite the fact that she had one eye, saying that the love he had for her was unconditional and not dependent on her beauty. Tope broke down in tears as she could not believe that the one man who she so despised and almost killed with her actions was the same man who was willing to marry her despite knowing that she had only one eye. Tope in that moment understood the true meaning of love as she accepted to marry Sheon, who loved her with all of his heart and treated her like a queen. That was how life taught a very proud and arrogant girl never to judge people based on their outward appearance, as true beauty lies within. The lesson to be learned from this story is that beauty is fleeting. Nothing in life is guaranteed, so we should learn to treat people with respect wherever we go. Do not look down on others because you believe you are better than them. Nothing in life is guaranteed, so be careful how you live your life and how you treat those around you. I hope you enjoyed the story. Like, subscribe and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.